How did your porn consumption escalate?
Once I had an iPhone, it was literally game over for me because I knew I could access it at any given time without anyone knowing. All I had to do was clear my search history. And so as that curiosity began growing with technology, it became, well, let me search this kind of video. I wonder if this video exists. And then I found more comfort in those things because I felt like I was learning how to be intimate with people. And then once I knew those keywords that I could search, it was hours of just searching different kinds of videos with these keywords in order to just feel that comfort all the
Yeah.
time. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. First of all, from the bottom of our hearts, we want to say thank you for being with us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Can you lay a little bit of like the foundational work, Myunique, and talk about who you are as an individual, maybe where you're from, some of those family dynamics?
Yeah, I come from a big family, so I'm actually one of 9. And so I just like grew up very family oriented, kind of what people would say traditional. And so small town in California, I do a lot of online content creating and just pouring my heart out to like encourage people.
Wow, I love that. How was it growing up with 9 siblings?
It was a lot, but it was I used to hear people say it all the time, like when you're mad at one sibling, you just go to another. I didn't really think that that was like a thing, but like now that I look back, like growing up, that was actually the case. You know what I mean? When my
Really?
brother was getting like annoying, it was just like, okay, I'll go hang out with my sisters. You know what I mean?
You have built-in friendships right there.
Yeah, yeah, they come with
That's
it.
that's real cool. So speaking to why you're with us today,
Yeah,
as you know, Myunique, our mission statement at Fight the New Drug is to educate on the harmful effects of pornography using science, facts, and personal accounts. And that's where you come in with a personal account. So can we make that abrupt pivot? When was the first time you experienced the harmful effects of pornography?
I was probably actually about 10 when I first like got introduced to pornography. So it was like right off the bat, about 10 years old. Like at the time, like it was like magazines were like really big, like a thing. And then people also had like the first generation like iPods. iPods had just released like video on their
Mm,
small screens. And I remember, so it was actually my brother who was like really into porn at the time. And then just me being a curious 10-year-old took the iPod one day and watched it for the first time. And then it just opened this door to what I felt like was just like a lifelong journey with pornography.
wow. When you first saw pornography, can you describe that moment of what was happening in your brain and body?
Yeah, it was unlike anything I had ever known because at the age I wasn't supposed to know, you know what I mean? And
Yeah, it's
so
adult
it just
content.
literally right. And so I remember just watching it and it was like just my mind and my eyes, like everything just became super fixated. And it was like nothing else was around me at that time because it was the first time and I was like, whoa, like what is this? And so I remember just like everything around me just like stopped because I was so fixated on what was happening on the screen. And so everything just became more curious in me to
Yeah.
keep watching.
Okay. That's interesting to me. You've
Yeah.
mentioned 2 things that I want to
Yeah.
pull out from that part of your experience. The first thing is curiosity.
Yeah.
You said it increased your curiosity. There was also a phrase that you used that I found intriguing, and it was that you said everything else shuts off. I think
Yeah.
that's how you explained it.
Yeah. Yeah. It was just like, because I remember never knowing, like, it was like I was just alone with the screen. I was just alone with the screen, even though I actively knew that there was other present, like people presence available and
Right.
around me, but it was just like nothing else was in like even my peripherals. It was just like what's on this screen. And
Mhm.
so I almost probably didn't hear anyone else talking at the moment, didn't see anyone, even though you're always mindful, like even peripherals, it was just literally just me and this screen for however long it was. And that was all it was until it ended.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. What you're describing is what scientists would explain as flow, like this hyper focused state where,
Yeah.
Food doesn't matter at that moment. Time goes by real fast.
Right.
And not only are you focused, but you're enjoying that focus.
Right.
There's a level of enjoyment, and that's why people turn to pornography again and again and again. Like, of course, we hate to say it, but we have to say it. There's a level of enjoyment there, and that's why people turn to it. So what you're explaining is flow. And scientists, they say that is the state that is going to mold a kid's brain the quickest.
Right.
So I have two questions, I guess. What were you trying to avoid? Were you trying to avoid anything? Like, were you turning to porn for escapism, or was it just out of curiosity, like sexual curiosity, or were you trying to escape something? And then the other question is, what were you learning during those highly focused states?
At the time, I don't think I was escaping anything. I think as I got older, definitely, like I used it as an escape mechanism. But I think as I was young, as a child, it was just more so curiosity, of just like, what is that? What are they doing? What's happening? They like it. I could possibly like it. You know what I mean? So it was completely curiosity as a kid. And then as I got older and I started putting all of these pieces together, it became just a method of escape from things, emotions, things that I was dealing with like in real life outside of the screen. And so it just, from curiosity to actually the escapism, happened as I began to get older.
Interesting.
Yeah.
If you don't mind me asking, and I'm going to ask it, but if you don't want to answer it, that's fine. I'm wondering what you were trying to escape from when you were older.
I think it's more so the emotional toll. Like, I was a super introverted kid growing up. I had maybe 2 friends throughout like that childhood, like even preteen stage. And so I would seek like just the comfort of like someone loving me, if I'm being honest. And then the older I got, I realized it turned into more romantic relationship level of like, I'm not a type of person that kind of dates a lot. I don't know. Like it was like, but there was such comfort in watching porn and even having a creative imagination to think like one day it could be me, that someone's loving that intimately. And so it was more so just emotions and stress of just like wanting or desiring someone to love me. It was that emotion of feeling lonely, you know what I mean? That honestly just started as I got older. It just progressed more and more. And so I think I didn't even realize that. It just slowly turned into that, where I started realizing I was prone to watch porn when I would get rejected by a guy. I was prone to watch porn when I was feeling lonely or feeling like I didn't have any friends. And so that was the moment that I realized like, hey, these are actually for me as to why now as I'm growing and becoming more of a young adult, becoming more of like even that preteen stage of it was controlling in my deepest, like most vulnerable moments.
Wow. Thanks for opening up about that.
Yeah.
I'm just letting that sit for a second because, man, that's a lot.
Yeah.
And your name is Myunique, but I don't think that experience is very unique. And what I mean by that, I think a lot of people can relate to what you just said.
Right.
What were you learning during those moments as you turned to pornography?
I think most of what I was learning was actually a negative, because I was learning like through videos of like watching porn of like, this is how I need to be to get loved. This is how I need to be in order for people to like receive me the way that I actually desire. When you're constantly watching these honestly fake imitations of love, you start to think it yourself of like, oh, maybe I should say that to this guy, or maybe I should behave like this in order to get that attention. And then from there, it'll turn into love. And so I think everything I actually learned was actually so negative, because I started taking these things and saying, it must be real. it must be real life. This, I have to be like this. I have to say these things in order to get what they're getting. But when you're watching porn, you don't see it as something that's fake. You know what I mean? They don't want you to think that. They want you to think like this is what it is to be intimate with someone. This is normal. And it's really not.
Mm. It kind of sounds like you were getting like some type of playbook or
Right.
like some type of
Yeah. That's a
script,
safe word to say. Yeah. Right.
some type of script through your consumption of porn.
Right.
And it just was a negative thing, like you explained.
Right.
Well, how did your porn consumption escalate? Was there escalation in regards to like duration, like time spent with pornography or with frequency or the types of pornography that you were consuming?
Once I had an iPhone, it was literally game over for me because I knew I could access it at any given time without anyone knowing. All I had to do was clear my search history. And so things started progressing first off when I got more advanced technology in my hands. And because I never used a computer because my mom had access to all of the computers. So everything I did, it was very like subtle and the sneaky, like my mom doesn't touch an iPod. You know what I mean? She's not that tech
Yeah.
savvy. And so once I got an iPhone, though, I knew it was game over because it was my phone. It
Mm.
was in my hand 24/7. And so as that curiosity began growing with technology, it became, well, let me search this kind of video. I wonder if this video exists. And then I found more comfort in those things because I felt like I was learning how to be intimate with people. And so the more different types of video I liked, it was the trigger of like how my body would respond to these things of like, oh, I think I actually like that. Oh, I like that, because my body started reacting to, the things that I was
Yeah.
watching. And then I found comfort in that of like, okay, this is good. And so it would just turn into hours of searching different types of videos that like would trigger my body in response. And so I would learn what I liked and what I didn't like. And then the more I knew I liked things, the more I just kept searching those specific things.
Yeah.
And I just found comfort in that of knowing my body is responding to this. So I like it, which means I'm okay. As long as I like it, it's fine. And so it just turned into learning what I would like and dislike, the things that would excite me and the things that I was just like, yeah, no, I can keep going. And then once I knew those keywords that I could search, it was hours of just searching different kinds of videos with these keywords, in order to just feel that comfort all the
Yeah.
time. Yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense. I have two questions. One of the
Yeah.
questions is regarding the age when you first got your iPhone. When was that?
It was right after high school for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you were considered an adult at that time, right?
Right. Right.
And so we're no longer talking about underage consumption. We're talking about,
Mm.
technically, we're talking about legal consumption here.
Yeah.
Okay. That's good to know. And then the other question that I had was, you mentioned that you had this biological reaction to the
Yeah.
porn consumption that you were to the
Right.
porn you were consuming. I'm wondering if like, I'm trying to articulate this. Basically, I think that sometimes you can't follow your biological reaction. I
Mhm.
think sometimes
Mhm.
biological reactions are unhealthy.
Right.
And just a small example of that would be if someone experiences suicide ideation, I think that's a biological response that's unhealthy.
Mhm.
The body's telling you to do
Yeah.
that, but I don't think people should follow that. I think people should not
Right.
follow that biological instinct. And so I'm
Right.
just trying to create some clarity, or not create some clarity, maybe just get more nuance. Do you feel like it was healthy for you to follow your biological reaction to the porn you were consuming?
No, not at all. I think it was completely unhealthy, to follow that because there are ways that our body responds to things when it's done right. And I don't think it's ever going to be done right through a screen of just like watching or consuming porn
Oh,
because it's
wow.
all set up for fake. It's like sometimes people are like, don't watch too many romantic movies. Like those are all scripted by writers. You know what I mean? Like your life is not going to end up just like The Notebook or whatever. And I think in the same way, it's the same when it comes to porn. Is like these are scripted things that are very like people pay a lot of money to have it very scripted and set up a certain way, but it's like that's not the reality of life. You know what I mean? Even when you realize just sex in general, Like it's not meant to be consumed the way that pornography often portrays it. And you don't know those things until you know those things. And so I think it sets us up because at the time I didn't realize how my brain was getting triggered to certain things all the time. My brain started getting triggered to certain types of videos, even certain types of people in the videos. Like it started getting triggered to these things where I was like, oh, I like it. You know what I mean? It's my body telling me I like it. But now, like being an adult in the real world, I'm like, all of those things that started triggering me don't exist in the real world. So what do I
Mm,
do with that? You know what I
mm,
mean? Because here I am on the screen and everything inside me is getting triggered. But in real life, it doesn't happen that way, you know, because they have money to produce and really fabricate a lot of the experiences that we're watching through porn, that it just doesn't exist in real life. And then you're sitting here like, why isn't it happening the way it was through the screen in real life? And it's because I started training my body to think that it was healthy when in reality it was completely unhealthy for me.
mm. Another example, let's say if
Yeah,
someone experiences childhood sexual abuse,
right.
if a child experiences childhood sexual abuse, their body is going to have a reaction oftentimes. And that doesn't mean that that reaction's healthy, because that shouldn't be happening.
Right.
It's child
Right.
abuse, but their
Yeah.
body reacted a certain way.
Right.
So again, maybe that's an extreme example, but the reality is that that can be really confusing
Yeah.
as a kid that doesn't understand those concepts
Yeah.
of how biology works.
Right.
The other thing I wanted you to speak to was regarding your sex. What I mean by
Yeah.
that is you're a woman,
Yeah.
and how was it for you as a woman having to struggle with pornography when society, and probably within your own head as well, you thought this was just a guy's issue, because that's what's pushed
Yeah.
oftentimes, that women don't struggle with it, or that girls or
Yeah.
women don't struggle with it.
It was it was super challenging. Um, I always thought that it was literally just something wrong with me because again, our society does push a very male oriented like pornography culture. So you don't think about it with women. I don't think I had even ever heard before I was probably like what 17, 18 until I realized that other women actually struggled with this. And so for years I just kept quiet. I didn't say anything because I was like, there is no other woman that probably struggles with pornography the way that I am. Like it got to the point where I was literally addicted and I was like, I have never heard a woman share just guys, you know what I mean? And like I said, even just watching my brother go through a similar like experience, it was just boys. And so never ever heard it until I reached like the peak of my adulthood, that I realized that this is actually a struggle for women too. And it changed my entire perspective of thinking, because then it was like, okay, other women are actually struggling with this. I'm not just like the bottom of the bottom, like scum of the earth, because I'm a girl who's watching porn. And so it literally opened my eyes to like, this is just a real issue. You know what I mean? It's a real, just human issue. And so it was definitely hard. It made me stay quiet for a long time about my own experience and like even wanting to get help, if I'm being honest, because I was just like, I'm just a weird girl. You know what I mean? Like I don't know what to do. I don't know who to talk to because that's just for boys.
Mm, wow.
Yeah.
Thanks for speaking to that. That's a big deal. You just spoke to the emotional distress that you experienced because of your porn consumption and how you perceived it. You mentioned a lot there.
Yeah.
As you were talking, I took a couple notes. I was like, okay, I want to ask about that, and I want to ask about that, because you mentioned addiction,
Yeah.
and I'm wondering if you can speak to that a little bit more. Did you formally get diagnosed with an addiction, or do you just label it an addiction? Like, is it a diagnosis from a professional, or is it more of like a self-diagnosis?
It was a self-diagnosis because it was something that happened when I like growing up. It was like, oh, occasional here, you know, every couple of weeks, like, oh, I watch a video, da da da. But the more deeper I got into it, the more I couldn't be without it. And
Mm,
so I remember when I was working at a job, like I couldn't even go an hour without watching porn. I remember hiding in the bathroom because I just felt so anxious and jittery. And I was like, I just need to watch a video. Like, I'm fine. And I would literally hide in the bathroom at the top of every hour to just watch a video. And I got to the point where I was like, this is unhealthy. You know what I mean? It started off so small. Oh, a video here and there, et cetera, et cetera. But the more deeper I got into these things, the more I realized that if I went without it, I was a different person. I became anxious a lot, very jittery, very like closed off. I didn't want to talk to anyone because I just wanted to watch videos. Every second I was like, I had the opportunity to be by myself, whether that be in a bathroom, like hiding in the bathroom at work to watch a video, like what? And then being in my car, just like sitting in my car by myself, making sure I'm watching a video. It just became to the point where like I couldn't go without it. And the reason that it's that like self-diagnosis is because when I think of people who have addictions, it's often very similar. If I know someone is struggling with like a drug addiction, it becomes like they are a different person when they are not consuming, to the point where like they're shaking, they're anxious. And I started to realize I had those same things. It was just with the consumption of porn. And so I got to this point where every hour on top of the hour, it was finding videos. It was actually downloading these videos and hiding them in a folder on my phone. Like it became to the point where I had to have some kind of consumption and access at all times when I started not feeling like myself, when I was starting to feel anxious, when I was starting to feel panicked, anytime anything happened. And because it was that coping mechanism of escapism, anytime there was like someone texted me and like I got upset because of that, I had to go run and watch porn because it was safe at the time for me.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't realize it. And so I was like, I got to this point where I was like, I'm addicted. I'm addicted to watching, and this is not good.
Yeah. I'm not a professional when it comes to, I'm not a mental health professional. Yeah. I'm not a therapist. Right. I don't play one online, but a lot of experts label pornography as a super normal stimulus. And so looking back on your experience, if you were having to consume pornography on the hour, that is a lot of super normal stimulus that you had to consume.
Yeah.
Did you notice that you were wanting it more, but enjoying it less?
Yeah. Yeah. I wanted it. And then once it was done, it was like, man, like, why? You know what I mean? And so it wasn't enjoyment because I was like, I'm almost like, because I was addicted, I was like, dang, like, I'm like a slave to pornography at this point. And so, yes, like, it was like, watch, watch, watch. But I wasn't happy because I knew I was basically like a slave to watching porn. I felt like it controlled me. You know what I mean? And so I felt like I had no control. And I was like in my brain, like, just stop. But it never got to that point until later on. And I just remember always just like, I don't want to, but I'm going to. And so it just felt like I was just controlled by the consumption of it, to where I couldn't even, like, in my mind, I'm like, I want to stop. But it was like this weird control thing where I was like, I can't though. Like it has to be every hour on the hour, even when I'm like, okay, I'm good I'm doing good. But then it was just like, but it's been an hour and I have to go. And so I really just felt super controlled by just like, I want to, but I know I'm not going to enjoy it anymore because I don't want to feel controlled by it anymore.
Wow.
When I started realizing that it was controlling me, I knew there had to be answers somewhere. And so I did just like turn to Google and start Googling like resources, like on a hidden browser. Like there has to be something, you know? And then that's when I actually came across Fight the New Drug, is you guys do blog posts and stuff like that. And I remember very specifically reading this blog post on the website. And it was like this lady, and she told the story of how when she got married, her husband couldn't please her because she had trained her body to like certain things and the pleasurement of herself in watching porn, and how it led to almost destruction in their marriage. And I remember reading that article and it was like, whoa. And that's when I realized porn actually has a negative side that no one even knows or talks about enough. Like she did not realize that it would lead to like an effect in her marriage. And I remember reading that, and that's when I was like, wait, there are harmful effects to this, where it's like, you just watch and consume, and it's like, oh, it's pleasurable, like I'm enjoying it, it's fine. But you don't realize the harmful effects that it'll have like years from now, when you no longer are even like watching porn, but there's still effects to that. And I remember reading that article, and it changed everything for me. Like my mindset was like, oh no, I need to actually know what's going on, because I was like, I have really been doing more damage to myself than good, and I never realized it. And so that's when I started getting serious about understanding the harmful effects that porn would have. As someone who desires to be married someday, you know what I mean? I was like, I don't want this to happen to me. You know what I mean? And so I started looking up, like, scientifically, what the harmful effects are, or even looking up like what porn even was, because like as a kid watching it at 10, I was just like, oh, these are just people that love each other and like they're being intimate. But when you know the behind the scenes of what a lot of that actually is, which is like billions of dollars in production, people that don't even want to be there, and like all these things take place, I became like, I was shocked. And I was like, I have been consuming for years and never knew any of this. Like I didn't.
Wow.
And once I realized it, I realized like, if I don't get a control of this now, like it's going to destroy me in the long run. And so I started looking at resources and looking at, and then I even actually like told someone, and I was like, hey, like I'm struggling with porn. And so literally just having a solid person that was able to help me through that, understanding the facts, because I was like, I don't want this to affect my friendships and relationships and even my marriage someday. I would rather get a hold of it now and start walking in that freedom, so I'm prepared when it comes.
Yeah. Looking back on your journey, are you grateful for your rock bottom moment?
Yeah, because I think I needed it. I think it was a wake up call of like, it's time. You know what I mean? And so definitely took a moment to like process through that. But I mean, I would hope that people get help before rock bottom, but I was thankful because it helped me realize like, okay, now is the turning page for me.
We're going to release this episode and like this conversation in November. What would you say to someone that's currently in that hopeless state, trying to do no porn November, but they don't know if they can do it?
Yeah, so I've actually participated in No Porn November years ago when I was knee deep in things, and I think the encouragement I would give is that it's a baby step process. I think so many people want to jump from like that mountaintop to mountaintop of like, I want to wake up and just be free from porn, like that's it. And I love the enthusiasm behind that, but I don't know if that's really real life. And so when I was like starting to walk in freedom, there were days where I would, what I call relapse, where I would go weeks, and then all of a sudden I hit this wall and I relapsed. And I think that's where we start to get discouraged, and then you're like, oh, I can't do this. But I believe in a baby step process. And so I started taking it day by day. Instead of like, oh, I'm going to go 6 months without watching porn, I started breaking it up into these like baby increments of like, let me just take it like 3 days. Give me 3 days, and then I'll pick back up and start 3 days again. And so I had to really work in this baby step process. Before I realized it, it was like gradually growing, like the time spent not watching porn. And so when I would do it before, though, it was like, I need to go like X amount of months, but it was just so unrealistic. And I had unrealistic expectations for myself. And then I felt so defeated when I didn't meet those. And so I think it's really just working in that baby step process of like, okay, it's a couple of days. If you're good and you relapse, like just start back over.
Mm.
It's baby step process.
I don't know if there's better advice. I don't know if better advice exists, because it is pivotal. Like those baby steps, you can't skip them. Those small steps are the most important. What would you say are some actual steps you took? Speaking of those baby steps or the small steps, like what did you actually do that helped you make it 3 days?
Um, the practical steps that I took was definitely moving my phone, because I would sleep with my phone like at my bedside. So when I was like, oh, I can't sleep, like I'll just turn on porn. It'll help me. That was like the biggest, I think, step for me, is I started plugging it up in the bathroom.
Mm.
Um, because I knew like I'm not going to get up. You know what I mean? Like I started making sure by a certain time, obviously, that my phone was charging in the bathroom instead of next to my bedside. And then beyond that, I made sure to surround myself with people. people that I know I didn't want to share my struggle with. So it's not like I was like, oh my gosh, like this and that's going on, but more so like I need to go watch a movie with my siblings, or I need to sit on a call with a friend until I go to sleep. So I started placing myself actually with people too. They didn't know what was going on, but it was like if I'm by myself, I'm more tempted to watch porn. And so when I started putting people around me in those moments of like feeling urgency of those urges that would come, I started removing myself from the situation. So it was like for me, it was always like my bedroom, it's my sacred space. You know what I
Mm.
mean? And I was like, I need to not be in my bedroom. So I would go in our kitchen, and obviously I have like family. So family would be sitting in the kitchen, or I would go to our family room and like just watch something and be like, okay, now I can go to bed. But again, it was like a day by day process of like, I had to do it this day, and this day I had to put my phone this way. Like, cause like it was like I started off like just turn your phone off. Just turn your phone off. But I'm like, it was too hard. I would just turn it back on and start consuming. But when I started removing the access at night, for me, it was like the main thing. Um, Removing that access and then placing myself outside of that setting that I
Mm.
always was so used to consuming, was like the baby steps that I started taking, and then realizing as time progressed, like I would stop spending so much time in our family room. You know what I mean? It was like,
Yeah.
no, I think I'm okay. And so it was just like slowly building up my resistance, um, to wanting to consume and to wanting to do stuff that actually helped get better and get better and get better.
Great advice. Love that. Thank you. How did it feel to finally get some days porn free? Because as a person who is currently in the thick of it or currently in their porn consumption, whether it's an unhealthy habit or it's a compulsive behavior,
Yeah.
it's tough to get those like first couple days without porn. And once you got
Yeah.
those, how did you start feeling?
I felt free. Um, my mind was clear. I got more things done because it was like I wasn't just focused on, oh, when am I going to watch? Oh, when am I going to watch? I started being able to complete like daily normal tasks, if I'm being honest. And so realizing that it wasn't consuming, because it's time consuming. You watch one video and it turns into like 10 videos, and all of a sudden it's hours and hours and hours. And you're like, dang, where did my day go? So when I started being able to go just like even a couple of hours, I was like, this feels good. I'm actually doing work. And like even at school, I was like, I'm doing my school work or like doing this and that. And so I started realizing that it didn't control me as much. So I was able to do what I would call normal day-to-day things,
Yeah.
like because there were times where when I was like entrapped in it, like deep, I didn't even want to hang out with my friends. You know what I mean? I was like, nope, because I can't watch porn around you. So I don't want to hang out with you. I just want to be by
Oh,
myself.
wow.
That way I have access to porn whenever I want. And so it was like even being able to walk in freedom of those day-to-day tasks of like, I can hang out with my friends at a normal time and like be okay,
Mm.
was like success for me. It was a win. And so I started taking these little wins every single day of like, oh, I can do this. And like, I can actually get 8 hours of sleep a night, So it was like those daily tasks led to little wins in my book. And I
Yeah.
started celebrating those wins.
Oh, that's
And I
cool.
started like, I actually feel good. Like my mind isn't foggy. Like I can actually talk to people. And so like just celebrating the little wins of freedom for me led to like even more freedom and even longer periods of it where it was like, I'm okay.
Oh, I love that. So focus on the small steps and then
Yep.
celebrate the small wins.
Yep.
Great.
Yep.
I mentioned that I'm not a therapist, but I did recently have a conversation with a therapist, and she said that there's a part of you that remains healthy. Even at your rock bottom moment, there's a part of you that remains healthy. Do you think that's true what the therapist said? Was there a part of you that remained healthy during your most challenging times with porn consumption?
I think a part of it's true for sure. Because I started realizing how to fight against these
Mm.
things, like when we were talking about just those little urges, I started realizing I actually don't have to give into this. You know what I mean? And so I think a part of me did actually remain healthy because it's not healthy to go off of everything we're feeling or like even say things that we're thinking like there's just like morality of just like knowing what's right and wrong. And so I think the healthy part for me personally was actually realizing I don't have to, just like we were talking about, like the suicide, like you don't have to do everything you're thinking. You don't
Mm,
have to act upon everything you're even feeling. And so I think that's healthy because it's creating boundaries within ourselves and even with relationships with ourselves. If I'm being honest, to like, no, this is not okay. We don't have to do that. You know what I mean? Instead of just like running rapid with no rules, no boundaries, no regulations, it creates that healthy boundary of like, actually, I can say no to this. Actually, I don't have to do this. And so I think just in life, to have healthy lives, like we're all about boundaries with friendships, family members, people. Like life is better when we have boundaries. And so I think that's the
yeah.
healthy part, is knowing we even have to have boundaries with ourselves.
Ooh, I like
um,
that.
but if we don't have those boundaries in place, we're never going to experience freedom. And so I think having healthy boundaries for ourselves in these moments is what creates those healthy mindsets and healthy practices, that we take with us as we do this thing called life. And so, yeah, I believe that there's a part of healthiness that exists in that.
Wow. Yeah. So I guess freedom doesn't mean that you just do whatever you want or every
Right.
urge. You don't follow every biological urge you have. You may have.
Right.
Freedom is about boundaries. I love that.
Yep.
That's real wise. Good
Yeah.
job. Good
Thank
job,
you.
my unique.
Thank you.
That's awesome. Do you believe in the phrase once addicted, always addicted?
No,
Oh, why not?
no, because that's to say that people can't change.
Mm,
People have to want to change for them. You know what I mean? Like, if I think if someone truly wants to change and be different, they can be. Just like we have the choice, like it's all about choices. We can choose to not, and then we can choose to do better. And so I believe that someone can live a lifestyle of choosing addiction, but that they can wake up and decide today's the day where that ends. And I
mm.
want to choose something different. And then they can walk in that path for the rest of their lives. So I believe that it can be for a season that someone can be addicted, but just like the seasons change, we don't always live in summer. Like some people want that, but that's like unhealthy for our environment. You know what I mean? I think it's a part of life, actually. And I think the same is true as someone who struggles with addiction, is that they are changing and they're growing, but it is a choice. You know, they could stay in that and choose that, but they can choose something different and create a new path and a new life for themselves.
Yeah. So you kind of perceive that as a self-limiting belief.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to give you the opportunity to have the last word during this
Yeah.
conversation. Is there anything on your heart or mind that has been left unsaid or that you want to reemphasize?
I'll reemphasize that pornography is not normal. And I think more people should speak on that. You know what I
Mm,
mean? Because when we're researching, like I said, it took me a while to research these things for myself because I was like, oh, everyone does it, whatever, whatever. And like, that's such a lie. And so I wish more people understood that before consuming it, because I think it would change the way that they think about it, you know? And so knowledge is power. And when people like, again, growing up when I was consuming, I didn't know any of these things. It wasn't until honestly Fight the New Drug educated me, like just reading through the blogs, reading through the website. It wasn't until I had the education behind it that I started considering what I was doing to myself, and even how watching porn actually supports what they're doing. You know what I mean? The reason it is a $1 billion industry is because we give it that. People are consuming, people are paying, and like all of these things. But if I would have known the educational facts behind it and how harmful it was, I probably wouldn't have started it. And I think if you are listening and you are someone that is educated in it now, share that with people. Use your voice to share that with people so that they understand it. And if you are not educated on it, get educated on it, because it is so much more than we think it is. And when we have the actual facts to back these things up and prove it, like I believe it will change the way that some people consider before consuming it.
yeah. Thank you so much. I want to encourage you to keep going and keep being you because you're awesome.
Thank you. I appreciate all that you guys do. Literally.
Same.
Probably would not be the same without just like a Google search and Fight the New Drug popped up.
Good.
So I appreciate it.
Good. I feel the same way about Fight the New Drug. They also helped me. So
Yeah.
We're on the
Yeah.
same page there. So
I love it.
all right, we'll talk to you soon then. We'll stay in touch, okay?
All right. Thank you so much.
Yeah, take care.
If you have a resolution to give charitably in the new year, consider joining Fighter Club. For as little as $10 a month, you can take an active role in helping others recognize how porn can impact them, their relationships, and their communities. As a 501c3 nonprofit, we rely on Fighter Club members to help us create resources that educate countless individuals on the harms of pornography, like this podcast. Plus, as a member of Fighter Club, you'll receive exclusive benefits like 30% off the Fight the New Drug store, access to our secret store, regular impact reports, and a Fighter Club kit when you join. Make a real difference in the movement for love this year. Join Fighter Club for as little as $10 a month at ftnd.org/joinfc. That's ftnd.org/joinfc. See you in the club.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Consider Before Consuming. Consider Before Consuming is brought to you by Fight the New Drug. Fight the New Drug is a non-religious and non-legislative organization that exists to provide individuals the opportunity to make an informed decision regarding pornography by raising awareness on its harmful effects using only science, facts, and personal accounts. If you'd like to learn more about today's guest and the conversation we had, you can check out the links included with this episode. If you've found this podcast helpful, consider subscribing and leaving a review. Again, big thanks to you for listening to this conversation. As you go about your day, we invite you to increase your self-awareness, look both ways, check your blind spots, and consider before consuming.